So I'm going to start for a moment with what I want you to know. I have been working with CTN for 6 years now. I'm also the proud parent of Siona, who's 8 years old. She's sitting over in the corner of that room. Siona, you want to wave? Say hi! And she's here with my husband, Philippe. It was really important to me to have Siona come tonight to hear from Alex, Sydney, and Lexi. I think they bring great perspectives. So I'm happy that she's here. So Siona is 8. She loves swimming. She loves Krispy Kreme donuts. And sometimes she even loves her little sister, Nalina, who is almost 2. Siona has cerebral palsy. She uses a wheelchair and has been supported by CTN since she was less than a year old. And our What I Want You to Know theme applies to all of us. There's a wide variety of people in this room today. There's parents, caregivers, employees, board members, obviously our clients and their families. So many of our network partners are here. It's great. And just our volunteers. I mean, Regula talked about they were lucky when I got to come, but really I'm always the lucky one when I get to come to the FAC meetings. And it's really important that you all share information. So I think a number of you filled out the word bubbles, and we're going to collect all of those and take them, and we're going to use them for future communication campaigns to inform our planning for different events, and we always want to hear from you, and that's really, really important. I should also mention that we are, for the first time, live streaming on our Facebook channel, which is our most popular social media channel, so that's exciting. And with the support of our board of directors here at CTN, we're starting to create more opportunities to hear from a first-hand perspective of those with disabilities. And that's why we're here tonight. So I am really excited. First of all, Alex, Sydney, and Lexi, your parents might be a little bit jealous, but all 3 of them have given me a little bit of permission to move them on to the next question if we have to because of timing. So I'll tell you my secrets later. But I'm very, very proud to introduce Alex, who is a social service work student at Seneca York and a co-founder of Ontario's first autistic self-advocacy organization, Autistics for Autistics. Lexi is at the far end, who graduated from high school last year and will be going to university in September. She is a former CTN client and current CTN Family Advisory Committee member. And Sydney, here in the middle, who is interested in drama and film, loves dogs and adventure. And Sydney is graduating from high school this month and participates in CTN's Me and My Community program, which is a 3-year program in partnership with the York Region District School Board, where are what they're here, and Holland Bloorview. It prepares students with disabilities for post-secondary. So welcome and thank you for sharing your time so generously. So I'll start with the first question. Most of us in this room are connected with people with disabilities, either as parents, caregivers, or those who work or volunteer in the children's rehabilitation sector. Yet very few of us have first-hand experience in what it's like to have a disability. So what do you want us to know about what it was like for you to grow up with your disability? And Alex, since you're closest with me, maybe I'll start with you.
I mean, I'm 21 years old, so like, this is kind of divide my life up into sections. For a good chunk, it wasn't until 9 years old that I knew about my disability. Those first 9 years, admittedly, were not the best. When I was told about my disability, the whole world kind of opened up to me. I started to hang out with other people like me with autism and ADHD and various other disabilities. I got a more positive sense of self. I got a sense of community. I got supports. I started figuring out, what I needed in order to be successful. But it was hard trying to navigate everything because I didn't always know what was going on. And thank God for my mother. Because if it was not for her, I don't think I would have gotten through school. She was kind of always there for me, advocating and making sure that the school board was doing good by me. Because sometimes, you know, it's not easy going to school when you have a disability. There's a lot of obstacles and a lot of frustrations, and if you don't know how to navigate it, it's scary. But now I'm at 21, I've been in college for 3 years now and doing pretty alright, so yeah.
That's great. Sydney?
It wasn't fun at all. All I knew that when I was a kid that all the other kids would play outside and never had a good friend, but I was stuck inside because my whole entire house wasn't accessible and nobody in my family ever had a disability at all. And that I had to suck it up and I had to be strong and I couldn't keep crying because it wasn't going to help me in life. And when I was growing up, therapy was the main goal. And a lot of the times I felt like, oh, no one in your family wants that for you. So I was pushed really hard as a kid. I was pushed a lot by people at CTN, people at Floorview, but the problem was I could never ever catch a break. And sometimes I would come to my mental breaking points where it's just like, you don't understand. You really don't until you're sitting in my position or somebody else's with a disability. You can see it all you want and experience it all you want and try to see my point of view, but you can't. And so that was the hard part. And another thing was I was never accepted at school. Got bullied a lot. When I was in grade 6, I started getting death threats for going into surgery to have my hip replacement. And I was told that I was going to die face to face. And then that continued on from there. I didn't say anyone anything. And then when I went into surgery, on the internet, there was a picture of me with weapons pointing at my face. So the thing with disability is that it's perceived as disgusting or ugly, or you're a freak, or you're retarded. And that's not a word that people like to hear, but it's the truth, and I'm here to speak it. So that's what growing up with a disability was like. Right now, it's okay. I've had my mental breaking point. It's been a really bad year, but I'm getting through it. And hopefully I can live in a world where I no longer have to deal with worrying to get somewhere, worrying what other people are going to say about me, worrying that a 5-year-old kid is staring me right in the face, because it's uncomfortable. I just want to be understood that I'm a human being and not a freak. So that's it.
Thanks, Sydney, for being so honest. Lexi, what was your experience like?
So growing up with a disability was also like a very bittersweet thing for me. I kind of have like 3 different experiences of growing up with a disability. Initially, from when I was like a baby until 10 years old, I didn't really know, I didn't have a diagnosis and I didn't really know what was wrong with me per se. Until when I was 10, I got my diagnosis of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but obviously I get the rarest type, so no one could relate to me with that. But as a kid, I was very to myself and soft-spoken. I was always in the corner reading. I also didn't really go outside for recess. My school was very worried about my safety, but as my mom agrees with, safety shouldn't be held more important than having a social life. There should be a balance. But because of this, a lot of kids saw me get special treatment or accommodations, and they felt jealous about this, which is normal for little kids. And because of this, I was kind of isolated as a child, which made me feel very, even to this day, I feel weird approaching people because I think that they have these presumptions of me. But after I got my diagnosis, it was, although it sucks knowing you have Ehlers-Danlos, it opened a lot of doors for me and a lot of conversations. So there was that. Although, as you see, I'm in a wheelchair right now. I did not use my wheelchair until I was 15 because I dislocated my kneecap. So before that, I had like what would be called an invisible disability, which, although this made me very privileged because people didn't really know that I even had a disability until like, you know, they noticed like I walked slower than other people, or like if I talked about it, which people in my life know I don't talk about my pain very often. But after I got my wheelchair, I kind of noticed like barriers that I haven't noticed before, where when people would go to compliment me, they would say, oh, you're pretty for someone with a disability, or you're smart for someone with a wheelchair. It's like, thanks, but it's not really a compliment. So growing up with a disability has taught me kind of like to kind of put myself out there more and change these presumptions that people have of me. And although people think like I'm bound to a wheelchair and like I have such a horrible, tragic life, if anything, I feel like my wheelchair has made me kind of embrace my personality more. And these past few years of using a wheelchair, I think I've become like a more outspoken and confident person. So yeah, that's my experience.
Thank you. That is, I think, probably for everyone in the room, it's sometimes hard to hear how tough things were, but I think it's really important that that's shared and we hear that and, you know, do more as a system. So that actually brings me to my next question, which is, I think most of us in the room are people who care about people with disabilities, whether we're parents, caregivers, service providers, and we want to support people with disabilities and do a good job in our role, whatever that role is. So what tips or information would you share to help us provide even better support for people with disabilities? And maybe I'll start with Lexi.
Okay, so I think it's like really important, as I stated earlier, to kind of have a good balance of safety and like, you know, normal, mundane social life things. It's also very important to like connect people with, like especially families. I remember when I was younger, my poor mom had like a huge binder this thick that she would take to every single meeting because like she was like an immigrant. She didn't really know like the different things like CTN. I wasn't a part of CTN until 2011. So I think it's important to just like not assume that everyone knows everything, because it's a lot of responsibility on a parent to be on top of those things. I also think that it's important to talk to like, yeah, the parent knows a lot about their child, but also have these conversations with the client as well, because most of the time, like sometimes when I was younger especially, the doctors or therapists or whatever would talk to my parents, even though I should have been involved in those conversations about myself as well.
That's great. Sydney?
Well, my advice, I mean, I know that a lot of people care, especially in this room, as I've seen over the past 100 years, it seems like. But especially when you're a kid, I think a lot of people misunderstand that you're a kid, that you don't want to go to therapy, that you don't want to be there really, that it just seems like your parents are putting you there for absolutely no good reason. And I get that once I get older, that my body will change and that I need those exercises and that I need that push. But I have my whole entire life to do that. What I really wanted as a kid was a friend, and I know that sounds weird being friends with the adults, but that was the friends that I had. Those are the people that I remember. And I can only pick out a few because only some of them took their time to connect with me and took their time to understand how I was hurting, or when I was happy, or what made me entertained, so that it didn't make me feel like I had to grow up just quite yet, that I could still be youthful, that I didn't have to live up to people's expectations and still have that imaginary thing, or imagine my future to be bright. And also another thing is, the only reason why people with disabilities are so inspirational, as they call it, is because people undermine us. And that may not be some of you in this room. Maybe some of you overestimate us or push us too much to the point where it's pain or it's ridiculous. I remember sometimes I go to therapy, they make me do a swan pose on the plinth. And no, I cannot show it to you because it's crazy. But
I don't think I can do it either, Sydney.
so it's things like that, or it's doing things that are some people can't do when they're able-bodied, which is doing 2-point kneeling, which I love now, but when I was 6, every time my mom brought me to therapy, she wasn't leaving for the next like 30 minutes. So what I'm trying to say is that we're human, and I know that you guys are doing your job and you're doing well, but it's the emotional side that you need to find, especially if you're a parent or you have 1,000 experiences with kids with disabilities. You should know that right now. So that's what we're missing. You don't have to be a therapist, you just have to be a that's it.
Alex?
Yeah, definitely echoing what was said by Lexi and Sydney. Above all, I think what is helpful is having connections, finding friends, people who you can connect to and relate to. You know, for me growing up, I didn't really have a lot of friends. The few friends I did have, sometimes they would, you know, treat me as an inspiration, or they would kind of tokenize me as like, oh, this is the autistic friend. What I really needed growing up, and what I eventually got, and what I think helped a lot, was having friends who were like me, because, you know, like what Sydney was saying, I tended to act, or be expected to act much more mature than any other kid my age would have been expected. And it kind of felt like I wasn't really getting to be a kid in a lot of ways, and kind of forced to grow up quicker than I was ready to. Finding other friends with disabilities was really helpful in kind of learning that it's okay to be a disabled kid, instead of, you know, just being the quirky one, the weirdly artistic, has a weirdly large vocabulary, hangs out with parents more than kids. Just having other people that I can relate to, that is really important. So, you know, finding other families that have disabilities in the family, things that your kid can relate to, and also that you can relate to as a parent, because I know it can be lonely.
So it's about facilitating connections, actually, in some ways for all three of you, right?
Yeah.
So this is a challenging question because I'm going to ask you to pick one thing. But what was the most significant thing that anyone in your life, it could be parent, caregiver, friends, siblings, teachers, service providers, doesn't matter who you pick, but what was the most significant thing any one of those people did or said to support you? And I will start with Sydney.
This is usually easier to be like the second or last one, but I don't have help anymore.
Sorry, Sydney.
Okay. Well, I would say my mom. We are very close. She's my #1 supporter, my #1 champion, who always says you can do anything, but you just have to do it, because I'm a procrastinator and I don't like doing things. It gives me anxiety, which is really stupid because it's not going to get done anyways. So, I can't narrow it down, but when I was in grade 8, I was getting really fed up with the fact that my life was all about my body, my disability, or how my foot twisted that way, or how my foot literally looks purple. But, you know, we were in a meeting one day and we were sitting all around there. I was getting ready for high school, and I think I embarrassed my mom a bit. It wasn't the right time to do it, but I simply told her to stop. I said, I want to focus on my grades. I want to focus on my future. Because at that point, I cannot see anything far ahead of me except for the life that I've been living. And she said, okay. And she gave me permission to literally drop all of that hard work that I can earn back if I want to. And she said, I'm there for you. And also this year, I started having mental breakdowns. I started having suicidal thoughts. I said, what's the point? What's the point of living in this world that wasn't built for me whatsoever? And I told her, I am not living for me, I am living for you. And she said, well, we're gonna make sure that you're living for you. So the fact that she gave me permission, she didn't push back, and her mind was open with me was a big deal. And another person that helped me was a guy named Michael Sturgis in elementary school. My best friend, my best buddy, every bully that came up to me, he pushed them aside, he sat them down for a day. The only reason he could do that was because he was a teacher. But, recess time, we'd do pranks on each other. I remember one time, one of the teachers took me and hid me. And he was responsible for supervising me. So she hid me in between the doors and he couldn't find me for an hour. And I got in trouble, but it wasn't my fault because the teacher took me. I mean, it's things like that, and he would take me inside and make me feel better. So I think those type of people who are open-minded, who aren't going to push back anymore, who just say, okay, I'm here to listen, I'm done battling you, you're too stubborn, and go ahead, do your thing, be a kid. I mean, she supported me in drama, and we did a bunch of crazy stuff. I mean, I played a horse. I played a very dumb guard. I've done 1,000 things. I played a girl on the subway who abandoned her friend. I've done a lot of things, but she supports me in that, and she says, you're talented, and you're this, and you're that. And that your disability is not going to stop you, and I'm not going to let you sit at home and stay inside all day, because the world isn't accessible, because you won't make it accessible. So that's, and I would like an applaud for my mom, because
That's awesome. Alex?
Can you remind me of the question?
Good question. So what was the most significant thing that really anyone in your life, you can pick one person, did or said to support you?
I was so busy listening to sing.
It was a pretty awesome response.
Oh man. I gotta be one. I guess the most significant thing would be when my parents gave me this little book. I was in grade 3 or 4. The book was called Asperger's Huh, like H-U-H ? And it was just this book about this kid with autism, and it explained like all these different symptoms and everything in words that made sense to a little kid. And getting that book really helped me, because I was, for the first time in my life, I was like, well, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just disabled. And so that really helped, just having all of a sudden this whole world of understanding that I didn't have before, and now could actually be like, oh, so I do this because of this, I do that because of that. Just having that explanation and clarity really helped, because, I mean, I'll admit, prior to getting that book, I was not the happiest kid. I dealt with suicidal ideation. I was often dealing with violent outbursts. It was not a great time, and it was just a lot of misdirected anger and frustration at myself, thinking that I had failed to be a normal person. And so receiving that book kind of was like, oh, I don't have to be. I can just be me. And ever since then, that's kind of directed my life path. I started hanging out with other folks with autism, people my age, in my classroom. I started going into a community class where everyone there had a disability, and we all had an IEP, and we could all just relate to each other on that level. But that book really kind of set the foundation for positive self-identity as a disabled person.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a game changer in some ways. Lexi?
So the most significant thing someone has said to me once was that I caused a ripple effect. This resonated with me a lot because I also have 2 younger siblings who have disabilities. So being the oldest, I was always the first one to kind of like start things. Like I'm the first one in my family to go to like university in September. And apparently, like, I'm an inspirational person, I guess. Just by doing like normal things, like hanging out with my amazing friends who are watching me and like embarrass myself right now.
Lexi came with a full entourage.
Yeah. So, like, hearing that, like, I try my best to be kind of like a role model for people, especially being like the person that I wish I had when I was younger. But hearing that I actually do that, that meant a lot to me. And also, like, someone important in my life is obviously my beautiful mom, who always, like, made sure that I was in karate, which I was apparently good at somehow, and musicals, and I went to camp every year, and she would not let me stay home. Like, I was just she constantly pushed me to be the best person I can. So, like, having her believe in me, that helped me believe in myself a lot, because sometimes I'd have like trouble believing in myself and I'd put way too much pressure. And even like last night, this is kind of personal, but I just like started bawling my eyes out and like thinking like I wasn't doing enough in my life. And my mom kind of looked at me weirdly, like I do more than like what most able-bodied people do with my life. So that, like, having that kind of support really, people say I'm inspiring, but I think the people around me are more inspiring. Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank you. So the last question, and Alex, I'll start with you. What do you want us to know about your hope for the future?
Not a lot, but if I had to sum it up, I really want to see a future that, first and foremost, is accessible. But that's not going to happen unless we see society and governments and workers really working with and listening to disabled folks about their experiences and about how to really create the best lives for us that there can possibly be, because I think a lot of people have a preconceived notion about what that looks like that is very different from how disabled folks see things. So my hope for the future above all is that we have more things like this panel where able-bodied and neurotypical people are listening to folks with disabilities about our experiences and about our hopes and our dreams and our childhoods and what we want for future generations. I think that listening to disabled people or any marginalized group, that is the most important thing in making sure that we can create a better future.
Thank you. Sydney?
Yeah, I'm second. Well, obviously for the future to be accessible, but in order to do that, we need every accessible thing to be seen through a disabled person's eyes, to be made through a disabled person's eyes, not an able person's eyes, because unfortunately you can't get that eye. It's for very special people who've been through this 1,000 times before. And you know, even though I want a world that's accessible and I want everyone to get along, I know that that's going to take a long time. So I would like for it not to take a long time, and for us to be represented in the media with other minority groups such as Black people, Indian people, anywhere else who've been excluded from this for too long. And we're still not there. We're the most oppressed people, I think, in my opinion, as I've seen, in the entire world, because we're not shown. People don't want to understand us. So what I think needs to be done is that at a young age, kids need to be taught in class about how to respect people with disabilities, how to treat them humanly, how to help them to a certain extent, not just push me into a table when I'm sitting there, but to help me when I ask for it, to help me when I need it, to be smart about it. But you know, that takes disability part. But for me personally, I just want to grow up with a great family. I look forward to having 3 kids and a good-looking husband, with a lot of good people around me, and to have for everyone in my life, because it still takes time for my family to understand where I'm coming from. Not my mom, not the people that are around me, but for those relationships to eventually grow, and for me to not have to explain myself anymore. And for that disability, I mean, it's not normal for everyone to have it. It's not. But I want it to be normal so that, you know, the word disability doesn't sound like everyone's so disabled and limited. It sounds like, okay, these are people that can get through anything, and that's the real meaning of disability. So that's what I think.
Thanks, Sydney. Lexi?
Add to my answer.
I want to add to my answer very quickly.
Sure.
I don't think it is.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Just very quickly, I want to add, because Sydney made a great point. A good-looking husband would be great.
Okay, Lexi, what kind of husband do you want?
One that will buy me a Tesla. Well, my hopes for the future, from a young age, I kind of had to learn that, like, future is not definite or a set path. There's many, happiness is not a destination, it's a journey, whatever. But I just want, like, I don't know, little things. Like, if I'm in a grocery store or whatever, and a little kid is staring at me, I don't want their parent to, like, pull them away and say, oh, don't do that, that's so rude. Oh, why are you staring at this poor girl, blah, blah, blah. Instead, well, take this as an opportunity to open up a conversation with your child. And I think a lot of that has to do with, like, as Sydney said, lack of representation in media, and not just media, but also, like, in the public, in work. People come up to me, like, randomly, and they're like, oh, I'm so happy to see you out and about. But I don't think it's, like, anything special. And initially, like, I get offended from that, but really I don't blame them because of the rhetoric of people with disabilities just staying home all day, crying about how much their life sucks. But I think everyone kind of has those days sometimes. Another point I'd like to bring is, like, especially with people with disabilities, we don't give each other a break. We don't allow ourselves to make, like, mundane mistakes or be human or stay up till 2 a.m. and binge watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine and not feel bad about it. Because we're met with these, like, presumptions of other people thinking either we have a horrible life and we cry about it every day and we can't do anything, or we're met with people who think we're, like, the most inspiring people in the world, who deserve to win a Nobel Peace Prize and, like, are geniuses, but really we're, like, the only difference I'd say between me and my friends is that they get to go straight up on a curb and just, like, get up up on there, whereas I have to go all the way around and find like some way to get into a store. So yeah. And also I think this is very important because of my like little sister and brother to have a future that is more open to conversations. That probably made no sense. I'm sorry.
No, it made complete sense. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. I think, you know, like I said, I've worked at CTN for 6 years, and I've had a lot of highlights in my time at CTN, and this is definitely one of them, so thank you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Carol, and if you guys can kind of follow me this way.